This is Laurie King and Friends, and we are talking about the Mary Russell Sherlock Holmes community. Um, I've been writing the Russell stories for since I was 35, and as you can tell, it's been a while. The book was published 30 years ago this year, in 1994. And I was amazed when a few years later, people started taking them seriously. And they started coming together around their love of Russell and Holmes. I have I have fan letters that started coming in right away from people taking me seriously, taking Russell seriously. Long letters, some of which were very puzzling, and some of which made me just feel so lovely. But before long, the internet started piling up in the background. And we started reaching out to each other, and people would send me emails. I set up, I was trying to remember, we were talking earlier, I was trying to remember when I first set up the website. And I mean, I say it wouldn't have been me. It would have been probably my niece set it up for me because she was doing stuff in the late 90s. But there was a lot of interest in building forums and discussion communities from early on. So now, one of the first ones, as we were trying to remember, one of the first ones was set up by a woman named Rebecca Anderson, who I think is Canadian, who has now gone on to write her own stuff. That started as um, I guess a sort of offshoot of Dorothy L, because it was called Russ-L. Do you know what the L stood for?
Just to make it Russell, but I don't know if what the Dorothy L stood for. Haven't
Maybe
a clue.
because Dorothy L. Sayers, and so they
I
called it
guess that's
Dorothy
that's
L.
the only thing I can think of. And
Yeah,
Russell.
yeah. So Russell was the first, and which of you were involved with that?
Mary Lee and I were involved with Russell,
Mhm.
and we got involved in Russell through, or at least I did, through the Hive, which was a website set up by a gentleman. He was, I can't remember what, he was a professor of something, but I can't remember what now. But he posted on what was called the Hive fan fiction. He would have people send him fan fiction, always on Russell and Holmes, and he would edit it himself, and then he would post it. And I discovered the Hive one day in about 2005 after I'd finished reading all the books, and I think yes, you had just published Locked Rooms in
Mhm.
'05, I think. And I read that as the last one, turned around, read all the books again, which I'd never done before in my life of any series of books. And one day when I was at work, I Googled Mary Russell and I found The Hive first. And I started reading fan fiction. And some of it was really good. Some of it was not so good. But there was one lady on there who wrote beautiful, beautiful prose, beautiful fan fiction, and her name was Mary Lee Taylor. And when I wrote my first piece of fan fiction about Mary Russell and sent it off to this gentleman, he was moving, he was changing jobs, and he said, "I don't have time to edit this, but there's a lady on here whose work is always perfect. I never have to do anything. Would you mind if I sent it to her to edit?" And he told me Mary Lee, and I knew her from Russell because I had found Russell by this time. And she was a poster on Russell. And I said, sure. And he sent it to Mary Lee. Mary Lee edited my first piece. It was posted. I was so excited because I'd never done anything like that in my life. And Mary Lee and I started corresponding
So
and
this,
outside of Russell.
so this has been Alice Wright. You may recognize Alice from one of the books where she is a sculptor with interestingly lax morals.
She's a slut, let's face it.
Yeah. Alice is a bid as a character in one of the books. That was that Language of Bees or God of the Hive?
That was Language of Bees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So so that's you may have come across the name Alice Wright at
Everywhere
some
I
time.
go.
And Marilee Taylor is, as you mentioned, Marilee is the all another ongoing friend. Um, and Marilee, tell us how you got involved in the whole thing.
Well, similarly to Alice in a way, I had read all the books through Locke. I had started when you published Beak, and read right along as they came out. And when I finished Locke, I was just bereft because I wasn't through with needing to read about Holmes and Russell. Um, so I went back and reread some, and then I was still very frustrated and felt like there's got to be somebody else out there who would like to at least talk about these things or whatever. And of course, you have to put yourself back then because it was so early in the days of the web and websites and all this thing. So I found the Hive, I found Russell. Um, I read virtually, I think, everything on the Hive. And one day I thought, and I hadn't written any fiction since I was about 14, although I had written professionally, but not any fiction. One day I thought maybe I could write a little story, you know. And so, being nothing if not ambitious, the first thing I wrote was about the wedding night. Very, very clean and appropriate version for PG. And then of course it's so exciting if you get into the fan fiction world, at least if it's a good site where you get supportive comments, not vicious attacks on your approach. So I very quickly became addicted to writing at that point for the Hive. And then, as Alice says, one day I was asked to edit this story by this Strawberry Curls person, whom I took by the sort of freshness of the writing to be about maybe 16.
In
Um,
other words, my writing was really immature.
but it had a youthful quality, shall we say. And so, eventually we began corresponding, and I was very surprised to learn that we were of the same generation, essentially. And then one thing led to another. We became good friends and still are. And
You guys both still do it's no longer the Hive, it's now Letters of Mary.
well, the gentleman who was running the Hive eventually just said, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And he was too busy with his career and all this stuff. And without going into any detail, there had been some, as we all know now, is sort of sadly too common on the internet. There had been some internal friction on Russell that led
Shocked.
to, yeah, that led to a number of us saying we don't want to be here anymore, and that was how Letters of Mary got formed, and um, and there's still a great deal of great fan fiction on there. Um,
It has
so
a huge archive of really well-written fan fiction on Letters of
So
Mary.
when did Letters of Mary start? Do you remember?
Lord,
Letters of Mary started in '06. In September of '06, I wrote myself a chronology.
Okay.
Um, the as Mary Lee said, the site kind of blew up and people just said, I don't want to be here anymore. That's not the way I want to deal with business. And another lady stepped up and started, and what is her name? My mind's just gone blank. Um,
Um,
anyway,
when
Letters of Mary was started as basically a fan fiction site, and in its early years, there was tutorials on how to write fan fiction. There were prompts, let's write about this. We learned about what a drabble was, which is exactly 100 words, and try and tell a story in 100 words, or a flash, which is around 1,000 words. And we would challenge each other. And we had what's called tennis matches, where one person would start a story and pass it off to somebody else, and they would write and then pass it off to somebody else. And you try and have a coherent tale written by multiple people, which was a lot of fun.
So when did you two actually meet?
Physically meet? We physically met in September of 07, soon after Letters of Mary started. A group of us off the site started talking to each other and said, let's see if we can get together. And the first time we got together was in Raleigh. Was it Raleigh? Yeah. I flew in from the West Coast, but most of the people were on the East Coast, and there were, I think, 4 or 5 of us. They were all ladies, and we met.
So this would have been for BoucherCon?
No, this was just let's get together and meet each other kind of thing.
Yeah.
I still remember my friends going, "You're going to fly across the country to meet people you don't know? Are you sure they're really women?" Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I talked to a few of them on the phone. So yeah, it was okay.
But we had a great time. We spent a weekend doing nothing but having lengthy conversations about Russell and Holmes.
Russell and Holmes, yeah. And then soon after that, the next summer, Mary Lee and I started planning a trip to England together. And we had never traveled together at that point. We'd roomed together that one weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have now made 5 different trips to England together.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had the bright idea. We heard about BoucherCon, which none of us had known anything about prior to that. And we said, let's go to BoucherCon in Baltimore. And that was when we met.
That was 08. And I actually met Laurie before that. Let's see if I can bring up the picture.
Yeah, I remember that.
Alice is the organized one. Yeah, there we are.
There we are. That was at Santa Cruz.
At Bookshop Santa Cruz.
Store. Right. Yeah. And it was the signing of Touchstone. I flew up to do that.
Yeah.
It was the first time I met Laurie, and that was in, I think, February of 08 or thereabouts.
So I find it really interesting that, that people in this Russell community have sort of come together. You come together by screens. And then that's, even in the days before COVID, that was not really enough. And so you start getting people having meetups at conferences. And there's several big conferences in the country, but BoucherCon, named after Anthony Boucher, is the sort of largest one. It's 1,500 to 2,000 people in various parts of the country. And so, it's quite often that there will be a Russell dinner at one of these, and they'll have, a bunch of people getting together, and they're always fun. So, John, when was your first introduction to the conference and Russell thing?
Well, first of all, I am not a writer. I'm totally a reader. I was introduced to Mary Russell by my daughters and my wife. So late 90s. They came up to me and said, "Dad, we know you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, and you certainly love women in fiction. We've read this book called The Beekeeper's Apprentice that we think you'll like." So, of course, I read it. I still have my first copy, and
that's the first one.
Yeah, look at that.
That's the one I have too.
And I loved it. So I went back and read everything that I could up to that point. Before meeting anyone else in the community, I was able to meet Laurie. In March of 2003, my local bookshop, Anderson's Bookshop in Naperville, hosted Laurie for the launch of Keeping Watch. And I remember very clearly sitting, because I always get to these things early to get myself set up. And I had my copy of the book, and I'm reading the beginning of it and thinking, this is mind-boggling. For any of you that have read Keeping Watch, to read the beginning and know that this was written by a woman who definitely was not in Vietnam was mind-boggling. But anyway, had a lovely little chat with Laurie in the signing line after, and that's where I met her. A few years later, something came up online. I don't know whether it was a forum or whether it was just a grouping of emails, or I just don't remember that well. But this was probably 2006-ish. And probably late 2006, early 2007, I was informed that there might be something you want to join online. We're starting something called the Laurie R. Virtual Book Club, which I jumped right into. It began June, July 2007.
Mhm.
And that's where I met virtually all these lovely people, not just Alice and Marilee and Karen, but a great group of other folks spread all over the country and even outside the country.
Yeah.
And a bunch of us became great friends virtually. In 2009, that was my first BoucherCon in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So that's where I started getting to meet the group in person, which was great. Just a couple photos that I dug up today. A panel photo of Laurie from that conference. Another panel. A photo with
Vicky,
Alice
yes.
and Marilee and Vicki Van Valkenburg, who was a big moving force in the early days of the Virtual Book Club, and Meredith Taylor, all great friends of mine now. The following year, in 2010, Laurie had a launch in Baltimore for Goth. And this is where I met even more folks virtual or in person now. So that's where I met Karen.
Wasn't that at the Boston Public Library?
Boston Public Library.
Yes.
What did I say?
Boston. Yeah, not Baltimore, Boston.
I'm
It
sorry.
was Boston.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
It was
I was
Boston.
trying to remember the chronology myself. So
Yeah, it was Boston. So this is sometime early 2010. And then after that, more of us started attending BoucherCon, other events, things like Left Coast Crime. And it's now the best thing. I mean, some of my best friends in the world, and don't get to see them in real life as often as possible. But thank goodness for the conferences, we do get to see each other. And it's been a great thing.
And I should say that that John is a great photographer, and he often shows up at events with a proper camera, and so he's sort of become the resident photographer of various conferences, which I I really think they ought to put you on the payroll, John.
I think so too.
Well, just this past weekend, we have a conference formerly called Murder and Mayhem in Chicago. It's now the Midwest Murder Conference, and put on by Laurie Rader Day and Dana Kay, and now joined by Tracy Clark. And Laurie is good enough for my photography at the thing to both take care of my entrance fee, my registration fee, and also pay for my dinner that evening with the group of authors. So that's
the
very
very
nice.
least they could do.
Yeah,
Really?
but that's great. But today's gave me the opportunity. I am a little OCD, as people know, and this gave me the opportunity to go to the various parts of the house that my Laurie R. collection is in, and I dragged them down here. I don't know how long it's going to take them to drag me up to where they belong, but I'm gonna, if I can turn around my camera, I'm going to show off the bulk of my collection. So every single one of first printings of every single Laurie R. novel,
Impressive.
all signed. A variety of
It's the shrine.
paperbacks that pretty much serve as my reading copies these days. So um, call me crazy, but I love my books.
Yeah.
I have 3 shelves in my library, which is on the other side of the wall that's in front of me, that are just Laurie R. King. They're the paperbacks, they're the hardbacks, they're the first editions, they're it's everything. And I did pull this out. This was, I don't know if you can see it or not. This
Oh,
was the response I got from Laurie from a fan letter I wrote her. And I can't tell you how absolutely thrilled I was when this arrived. I had never written a fan letter to anybody in my life, and I wrote one to Laurie R. King, and she responded.
there we go.
And at that time, I was known by Strawberry Curls on a lot of different forums, and she wrote "Dear Strawberry." So, and it was February of 2008 when she sent this to me.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I had, and Lori was very kind to me. My first correspondence with her, and I don't remember which book it was now, but we had lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for a dozen years. My wife went to grad school at Cal, so I was very familiar with Berkeley, Oakland. And again, I forget which book it was, but I read it. And in the book, again, OCD, I found that Lori had put one of the streets, maybe College Avenue, in the wrong direction. And like a goof, I wrote her a letter and tried as gently as possible to say I found a mistake. Not that it really mattered. I mean, who cares? And Lori wrote me back a nice little, on a card like that again, a nice little response. And didn't tell me to run away and don't ever read one of my books again. But it was very kind, very gentle.
Yes. Even authors get things wrong. I'm sorry. So that brings us to Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi.
I'm sorry you were blinded by the sun. I'm sort of...
Yeah, this is the best room to do this in, but the light can be a little tricky.
That's good. So Karen is the mom of the Facebook group, the Beekeepers Apprentices, and we started that. I don't know, just a few years ago.
Just 2 years ago, maybe.
Was it?
Yeah, I think we're in the third year now.
I think we're in the third year now.
Yeah. Yeah. So Karen is a mom, and Karen and I actually had a great time. We tend to have these conferences that we go to, and I tend to go to Left Coast Crime, which is mostly on the western part of the US. Sometimes Malice Domestic, which is in the DC area in Bethesda, and to BoucherCon, which moves around, as I said. So this year I've had 4 events, the big events that had to do with the Beekeeper's Apprentice 30th anniversary. And one of them was in Santa Cruz, and the other were following the, just the day before each of the conferences, where the conference was going to be. And most of them had 2 or 3 of you in there, and there were various people and the rest of it. But Karen and I happened to be the only one of the tight team at Malice Domestic. And so I think I spent more hours with Karen this year than I did with an awful lot of, I think,
it was
my daughter. It was fun. We hung out together. So
it was nice. I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was just, BoucherCon is big and busy, and there's a lot of people that you need to talk to, and there's a lot of people who want to talk to you, and there's not a lot of time for just like, hey, let's sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a beer, and that. And so it was nice to be able to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For things like BoucherCon, I generally make dates with people that I want to see. And, with the team, the Beekeeper team, we usually set up, a breakfast or a lunch or something in addition to the larger dinner. So we can talk business. We can talk about, how are the various social media sites going? What would you like me to do? Should we be doing more Zoom things? Because, I run this thing on my own. I've had various people help me, and they either, go away and live a life somewhere, or they just don't really understand how authors work because, it's not like a business. I'm not running a business. I'm part of this community. And so I need to have people in my community say, this is what people love. This is what people have had too much of. This is, so we try and have one of those meetings at one of the other of the conferences that we're going to. I mean, sometimes we meet up on Zoom, but sometimes we also get together and plan things out. So, I mean, I love it when we get feedback on, especially the Facebook group, because they're sort of, so Karen, you want to talk a little bit about the bees?
Sure. I find the bees is interesting because it feels somewhat like an extension or an outgrowth of the original virtual book club, which started, I can't remember when Vicky started that, but it was early days.
2007.
Yep. The summer of.
Was it?
Summer of 2007.
Yep.
Okay. I thought it might have been before that. And that was the real start of the community in a lot of ways of the beekeepers and your fan group. And I feel like the beekeepers has become that now.
Mhm.
It's gotten to be bigger because it's a Facebook group and more people are on Facebook than were on that original forum. But it's a hang out, talk about Laurie's books, talk about raising bees, post a picture of you went to England and went to Oxford and look, this is where Mary Russell was studying. It's a very warm community, which is lovely.
Yeah.
Really lovely.
Yeah. And I mean, touch wood, but I don't think we've had any meltdowns or squabbles on it.
No, we've had a few.
Couple times we've had to clear our throats.
But yeah, no, pretty much I've not ever needed to really bring out the mom voice ever, which I'm happy about. You don't want the mom voice.
Mary Russell would not care for this.
Well, I think there's been very good judgment on the part of the moderators of that group too, because one of the reasons, and I will not go into any detail, one of the reasons the original group fell apart was an over-ambitious effort to police what people discussed and keep it in an extremely narrow scope. And people did not want to be one of the fun things about, I think, a really thriving group is that discussion can wander quite far afield and it will always return to Holmes and Russell if you just let it be.
We can go to Star Trek and Star Wars and come back around to Russell and Holmes.
But if you say, no, you may not post anything here having to do with Star Trek, stop that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. So I think
we do have a couple of rules. I mean, we've had to sort of ask people, to limit the sheer number of stuff that they put up, or we've had a couple of people who kind of basically want to use it as an advertising venue, and we've had to sort of say, I don't think so.
Yes, she's gotten banned a number of times.
Yeah.
That one I've gotten my mom voice out for.
Yeah, there haven't been many though. And I think just by being careful with the requests to join has helped a lot. And
it's really tough to get in. You have to answer a question.
Two questions.
Two questions.
I mean, one question and a yes. Follow the rules.
I will come step forward and say, when I took over Letters of Mary, I was the one that said, okay, we've got to have some way of weeding out spammers and whatever. Yeah. So I came up with two questions that people had to answer. Which, if you've read the first book, you can answer the questions easily.
Yeah.
So it has helped. Same thing with Letters of Mary. We don't want spammers. And when I accept somebody into Letters of Mary, I send them a welcome letter. And one of the things I say is, we're courteous here. If you can't be courteous, you're going to be banned, and we don't want any spammers. We, don't advertise, don't, out to people for other things. This is a community that talks about fan fiction and Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah,
And
thanks to Karen pointing it out. It made me aware that we did have one recurring, probably one recurring individual as a spammer that she let me know to watch out for. And whenever, and this individual uses different handles,
Yeah.
but always I'll see that they joined Facebook sometime in 2024 and they already are following like 150 groups. And I think, whoops, not you,
Yeah.
goodbye.
big red alarm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that actually the Beekeeper's Apprentice group could be more active, could be more, people could, I think people may feel a little shy to post sometimes, that
That
their
does happen.
posts need to be about bees or specifically about Sherlock Holmes and I feel like, if you can make the connection to Russell and Holmes, you can post in there, and if I feel, or one of the other moderators feels like you're getting too far afield, we'll gently say you're getting a little too far afield. But I would love to see a little more discussion going on, a little more enthusiastic participation.
Yeah.
I've been thinking in the past week or so a lot about community, and just how important community is. And you have communities that you live near. You might have a faith organization that you belong to, or you might have a knitting group or a book club, or I don't know, you do long distance bike rides together, whatever. But online communities can also be really, as John was saying, really, really important. I've made some excellent, wonderful, lovely friends through Laurie's various groups. I went to London with two women and we just had a fabulous time. So, I think we need to nurture our communities and support our communities. That's one thing that will keep us all going.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
I agree.
Yeah.
So,
and it's always, I mean, as the author, that is sort of the reason that people are coming together.
It's all your fault.
It's
Laura.
all her fault.
It always seems kind of odd to me that people, anyway, but it's always, I hesitate to be too involved because people will think that I'm trying to direct what they're doing. But I want people to know that I always read what's going on the Beekeeper's Apprentices. I'm there every morning. I always check it in the morning. I'm not one of those people that keeps going on social media during the day. I do it once, and usually, unless there's something going on. But I always read what people are saying, and I often comment, but I don't like to be omnipresent. But I think that it's a balance that as a writer, I try and find, because I don't want people to think that they have to always be aware of me looking over their shoulder and correcting their grammar.
Yes.
You do
The
understand
grammar
that
police.
Holmes and Russell live in our heads independently of you.
Good. Yeah. And I should also say, if any of you are wondering out there, I do not read the fan fiction that comes into Letters of Mary, nor do I read Sherlock Holmes pastiches, when, the actual published ones, because I have to keep my own awareness and vision of who these characters are. And I can't, I can't risk having someone else's version of it or someone else's episodes sneak into mine. So, I mean, I'm absolutely happy for people to write fan fiction. It's, I find it, I find it really humbling that people care enough to do that. And it's lovely to know that there are people out there who are telling stories about my characters. But I feel that as a writer, I need to draw the line somewhere, and that's where I have drawn it because I'm too easily, affected by other things. So any of you who are doing fan fiction, have fun. Just,
Oh,
just
yeah.
don't try and sell it. That's a different matter.
I think Mary Lee will agree with me. Occasionally, she and I will go, was that in a fan fiction story or was that in one of the books?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You
okay,
really
no,
don't
that
want
was
the
fan
author. You really don't want the author thinking,
doing that. No.
I would add one thing, speaking for the fan fiction part of it, is that people love the vacancies that Laurie has deliberately left in her stories. That's why there are so many stories about the wedding night, the honeymoon, the what happened when Holmes left Russell in the bolt hole and went off by himself. What did he do? I mean, there's all these delightful things that you leave to the imagination, and that's where the fan fiction comes in.
Yeah.
And I've actually had people say to me that they have taken their copy of some of the books and they have stuck the fan fiction in between the pages.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that there's kind of a contiguous, if you want to know what Holmes did when he left the bolt hole, we have an answer for you.
That's right.
or 10.
Or how often, people really want to see Holmes with Estelle. They really crave that. And a lot of people have written a lot of Holmes and Estelle stories because the interaction between them has been somewhat limited in the books. So people have expanded on that because they really love the character of Estelle and the idea of Sherlock Holmes versus this little girl who will take him on. She will say to him, I understand that. Don't look down at me. I know what I'm talking about. She's as smart as him. She's as smart as Russell, and she's as sharp as a tack. So people really love expanding on Estelle.
Well, and Alice does an excellent job with Mycroft.
I love my Mycroft.
Alice has a big crush on Mycroft, I think.
Know that I have a crush on him as much as I find him really intriguing.
Right.
And so I have written an enormous amount of Mycroft stories because I'm always exploring what is he thinking about? What was he, why did he do that? And why did he say that? And what was his reaction to Holmes marrying this young woman?
We have done a number of things that encourage creativity on the part of the community, both written and visual arts. Any of you who have gone onto my really very large and somewhat cumbersome website, there's a page of fun stuff that you can see some of the results of stuff that we've done. I think we did 15 weeks of bees to celebrate the 15th
that was 09
anniversary. Yeah, and then we did 20 weeks of buzz where we had contests and writing things and I think I'm just about to launch another one in the Beekeepers Apprentices group, in the bees group, which I won't tell you what the prize will be, but that I think that we may do a sort of contest going on there of maybe something written, something visual, and something otherwise, so that because not everybody can do a drawing. But it's been really fun because we've had such great response. You can see a video that we did that is called the Mary-O-Rama, which is a video with all of these images that people have done over the years that fit into a specific format. I give the frame and say you have to match these colors, and you can put any kind of image that you want in there. And so we put it together as a train journey, looking out the window of the train at this image of the scenery passing. And that was such fun. I just loved doing it and would like to do something more like that at some point.
Marjorie's crossword puzzles.
Marjorie, yeah, we have one person who loves to do word puzzles and crosswords, and those have been fun. We did haiku for the Pirate King. No, Dreaming Spies.
Dreaming
Dreaming
Spies.
Spies.
And anyway, we've done various things. And I wonder if any of you want to talk about, where the community, may be headed next. Now, Alice, you in particular have just opened up a new venue because of events over the recent months have meant that for those of you out there who don't know, Mary Russell, yes, is still alive, living in Sussex, and she regularly keeps up with her Twitter feed. Or in this case, she's now moving over to
Blue Sky. I'm Mary Russell's amanuensis. She tells me what to put down and I post it for her. I'm in constant contact with her. She's
So-
quite a spry old lady.
what is the handle on Blue Sky?
It's just Mary Russell. No hyphens, no spaces. Mary Russell. It's at Mary Russell.
Yeah.
And
Now,
and you
there's some other account out there that's Mary Russell Holmes, but we don't
there's
know
a
who
Mary
that
Russell
is.
Holmes. Yes, I
But
saw Russell
that's
reached out
not
to her
us.
recently and asked if, who the hell she was. No, but
Yeah.
she didn't say it that way.
Yeah. Fortunately, it's not porn, so we don't have to be too confused with it. But but and what about Karen, what do you think about the bees? Where do you think we're buzzing?
I'm not sure where the bees are going from here. I would really like to hear people on the bees chime in and say what they would like to see more of, what they wanted. Do they want your moderators to jump in and post things? What do you want? Where do you want to go? Because it's a fan group. It's for the fans of Laurie King and, particularly for the Russell Holmes books. And what do you guys want? What do you want us to do? I stand around and go, I don't know what we should do. I don't know. John, what do you think we should do? John goes, I don't know. What do you think we should do?
Yeah. Yeah. It's also it's hard to know what the ideal number in a Facebook group is. I mean, this is a debate that we've had a number of times, is we're running about 2,500, I think.
I think
Right,
so.
right about, yeah.
Yeah. And it seems, I mean, there's a lot of people who never post. There's a lot of people who post a lot. It would be nice to get everybody, turning over more. But I don't know what the ideal is for the size of a Facebook group.
Yeah.
It seems from past experience on social media that somewhere on the order of 5 to 10% of the group of a given group will be fairly active,
Mhm.
and the majority will be lurkers, which is fine, because the lurkers also pick up information and they see the things that everyone else is posting. I guess the challenge is to find ways to raise that 5 or 10% up a notch. And we know from, again, past experience that there are a lot of talented people out there, whether it be writing, whether it be art, what have you. And I would just ask our current members of the Bees that if you have some artistic or otherwise expression of your fandom, really feel free to post it on the Beekeepers, because people really are not judgmental, and
No.
people really do appreciate seeing the fruits of other people's talents and interests. So I would certainly encourage anyone just to, throw it out there, because we love it. And if it happens to be something that's over the edge, we'll let you know. But for the most part, we're going to like and enjoy. And you got to know that the other people, even if they're not commenting, they're going to be enjoying it too. So,
And it's all kind of talents. Do you remember, I know you were at that BoucherCon in Albany where, and I cannot remember the woman's name, but she baked a cake. That was the Bones of Paris cake.
Yeah.
Right.
And that thing was amazing.
I have a photo of it somewhere.
That was
Yeah.
so cool.
was-
We loved that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
I
blanking.
think the only thing I mean, clearly no pornography. Thank you very much. Mary would not approve.
No.
But no fan fiction on that site.
No.
You know, if you're interested in doing the fan fiction, then I would go reach out to the Letters of Mary group.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. So,
Yeah.
um, and I think,
There's
I
legal issues with the fan fiction, so
yeah, well,
we don't want to
and
go there.
I think that even when it comes to, I mean, we've been going back and forth. One of our bees wants to set up an Etsy store that has to do with the Russell stuff. And it's always tricky because, it is under copyright. My publishers have very clear, needs for keeping control. If there's ever any movie or film project made out of this things, that's definitely a no-no for trying to sell anything with that. But it's one of those things that is a case by case basis to see if it's just one person doing things she loves and having an excuse to not have them just sit in her house but share them with others. That's one thing. If you're going into mass production of Mary,
Yeah.
Mary Russell paraphernalia, not so much.
Don't be doing that.
Yeah. So, but I think anyone in the bees who has dealt with the moderators and Alice, I don't think, are you a moderator on the bees?
No, I'm not a moderator on the bees.
So I think it's
I'm,
just
an, I'm a frequent poster. I'm just
yeah,
not a moderator.
yeah. But Marilyn
Yeah.
and John, you are, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can see they're very friendly and amiable and happy to have people come in. So do show us all of your projects that have to do with Russell and Holmes, or the Victorian era or Edwardian London, or whatever.
Yeah.
Pictures of bees.
And the other thing
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone that is in the Beekeepers or any of the other social groups, first of all, I would say if you have the opportunity to go to a mystery conference that Laurie and friends will be at,
I was going to say yes.
take advantage of it.
Yes.
Because it's a wonderful experience. You'll be among like-minded folks, people that will welcome you and appreciate you. The other thing is, if you're someone that already goes to these types of events, search us out, seek us out. We don't bite, at least not too hard. We would love, right. We would love to meet you. And again, we all started out as virtual pals, and we've developed some great friendships in real life.
Yeah.
So that can happen to you.
Yeah, I remember my first VoucherCon, which was Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah.
And
I think many of us, it was our first.
I think that was the first one for a number of us. And I remember walking in and being, really trepidatious. I had not gone to a big conference like that before. I didn't know anyone in real life. I'd only met these people online. My husband was very dubious about that. But I walked in, it was like,
all these mystery readers.
wow, these are my people. All these people love to read. All these people write books and read books. These are my people. It was awesome. It was, and I mean, I sat and talked to, I don't know how many strangers, and I'm an introvert. I don't talk to people. And it was great.
It was a great conference.
It was fun.
Conference,
Yeah.
Actually, it was one of the best I've ever been. I mean,
that was a good one. VoucherCon can be a little overwhelming because it's really big. Left Coast Crime is smaller, and so it's a little easier to, if you get overwhelmed, you might go Left Coast Crime or Malice.
I think it's about time that we have the traditional telling of the first time I saw Laurie.
Oh, we must hear the story.
Well, Laurie usually tells it the best.
Well, I'll start it off. This was at Baltimore, and I was staying at a hotel, and they had one of those floors that's your breakfast room. It comes as part of your room price, and it's what do they call those? The
Like the concierge
like a
level?
Concierge level or something
concierge
like
room.
that.
Thank you. I think they called it a hospitality room, but whatever it was. But it means that you have to kind of stumble down there to get your cups of coffee in the morning. And so I came in, and one of the drawbacks of being a recognizable writer is that I have to actually get dressed before I leave the house or the hotel room in the morning. So, but I hadn't actually had any coffee. So I go in there and I'm like this. I'm headed for the coffee, and I hear this noise, which is barely.
And in my defense, unlike some of the rest of you, I had not met Laurie in the flesh, before, and it was sort of like what a Beatles fan would do if, Paul McCartney walked into the room. I shrieked. I
I
cannot.
was sitting with my back to Laurie's progression, and I'm looking at Mary Lee, who's the calmest, most easygoing person in the world, and she suddenly shrieks, scared the Jesus out of me. I didn't know what had, was there a murder going on behind me? What is happening? And it was Laurie. It was just Laurie.
I just said something.
Just wanted a cup
Oh,
of coffee.
Laurie, who was grateful she didn't have a cup of coffee in her hand at the time.
You were remarkably gracious, though.
She was, as always.
But by God, I was awake.
But anyway, I will never live it down, but it has become,
It's legend. It's legend.
Yeah.
So, any of you who are out there and come across me in some odd place, it's not required to shriek like that, but you feel free to say hi.
We've seen some people pretty dumbstruck with awe, haven't we, Alan?
Oh, yes. I was the first time I met Laurie. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, a couple of people who were unable to speak in your presence. So, it wasn't just
Fandom runs deep. It'd be, it's almost like getting in front of Sherlock Holmes and saying
you
hello.
poor deluded people. I mean,
a shriek that probably went right up there with Marilee's was probably I'm thinking Raleigh, Boucher Cotton, and Kathy Boone Reel, who was part of the group that had never met Laurie prior to this, had walked into the lobby, and Laurie was speaking with someone else, and Kathy was actually standing quite close to her with her back to her, and I tapped Kathy and I said, "Turn around." So she turns around and she sees Laurie, and I thought she was gonna have a heart attack. I mean, the look on her face and then the sound that came out of her mouth was pretty impressive.
I always love the phrase that Sabrina Flynn, who's another member of the group, the first time she met Laurie, she said she couldn't speak. She just kept looking at her and thinking, Russell and Holmes lives in her head.
That's so Sabrina.
That's Sabrina.
Only another passionate reader will understand. That's the thing. You have to be true fan to really get it,
And for those of you out there, Sabrina Flynn is an amazing writer in her own right. And if you've never read anything by her, I would highly recommend.
Yeah.
I will say she started her writing career on Letters of Mary.
Started on Letters of Mary, yeah.
Writing fan fiction. And Mary Lee and I encouraged her to expand on that. And she went off to write a wonderful series called The Ravenwood Mysteries. And yes, they're wonderful, beautifully written, wonderful characters that literally get in your head, very much like Russell and Holmes.
We should make a list sometime of the number of people who started out on the Russell and the other Letters of Mary, because I know half a dozen people who are now writers or became writers after that. So we should have a master list of.
There are probably more than we know, because not
probably more than we know. Yeah,
not everybody was there under their real name, and
most used a handle of some kind or you know.
Yeah.
I was strawberry curls
Yes.
For obvious reasons.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah. So, well, I thank you all. This has been lovely, and I hope that that some of you watching this have been interested in meeting some of our key players in this crazy world of Russell and Holmes. And I hope that we manage to meet each other with shrieks or without shrieks, as the case may be, um, in the coming years. And thank you all for being part of the Russell and Holmes community.
Thank you
I
for
would
writing
add
them.
that if you have questions for any of us, go ahead and post them in the comments, and we'll check back in and, try to answer them. I'm assuming they're going to mostly be for Laurie, and that'll be good. That's fine.
Fine.
Okay.